The honeymoon with cannabis is over. Value is no longer hinged on how much you can grow, but what you can do with the raw material afterward. Downstream products are where it's at, and companies like 1933 Industries, TGIF.C, have made that shift successfully, boasting well over 100 SKUs in California and Nevada's massive legal cannabis markets. EQUITY.GURU's own Chris Parry sat down with company CEO Paul Rosen to get a closer look at the company and its prospects over the next 12 months.
So, to play devil's advocate, and that's the role that I'm here to play, talking to previous management many quarters ago, the answers to similar questions were, we're going to be laser focused on reducing costs and getting closer to profitability. Back then, the talk was always, we're a quarter, maybe two away. Today, the talk is pretty similar. I'm not saying that you're full of shit or anything. I'm just saying that, and as an outside observer, it would be easy for the cynical people out there to say, yeah, every company is aiming for that profitability in a quarter or two. What can you say to people that will show them that there's no more planning needed to be doing? You're actually executing that plan.
I think that investors have to make that call, and I think it would be entirely reasonable to say, I've heard this song already. I've heard it twice, and now I'm just hearing it again. Do you guys have like a little talking notes when you do investor calls? And I would say that's all cool. The answer is we don't have talking notes, but I'm hopefully being granular enough today. And so what I find a lot of times is companies, what they do is or entrepreneurs or aspirant business people, what they do is they describe a destination. We want to get to this place, but what they don't provide you is a map. And so I'm outlining the map that gets us there today. So yes, I want to see our stock at $1, and I want to see us making money, Q on Q like never before. But that's just a goal of where I want to spend my winter. It's not an actual route map to get there. So the route map that I emphasize, which is one that, with all due respect to previous management, they may have tried, but they did not succeed, is meaningfully cut our expenses and focus on only what is most essential. They did not. We have. It'll eventually show up in financial reporting. You'll see we're spending less money each month than we were under previous management. You'll also see that sales are going to start moving in the right direction, despite the fact that we're spending less. The debentures, I've outlined what that means in terms of preserving cash. So I would say to the market, I fully understand your cynicism. Consider me, as a previous investor, also cynical in that I heard the same undertakings by management, and I like management and work with them and support of them. But at the end of each quarter was like another quarter where we're missing here, and we're still, all I would say is, give new management a little bit of time, because these things are not immediately like just switching a lever and okay, everything's ticky-boo right now. It really is a grind, but we have made, I think, demonstrable, objective, verifiable progress in a short period of time, and I'm going to keep buying our stock. So if people want to know what I really think about this company, I'm here for the stock. My salary is less than glorious at this point in my career. Happily, I don't need the salary to dazzle me. What I really need to do is to see where the stock is going to perform. And
well, look, you've also got a reputation to uphold. You don't just sort of jump into any old sinking ship and say, well, it wasn't me. So with the money that you've spent and the reputation that you hold with the company, it's pretty clear that you're here for the long haul. You're not just here for a flip.
Yeah, there's no, to equity holders, I have no win here unless you win. It's just that simple. There's no way I can talk about having sort of a common fate here. The only way I can turn what has turned into a less than great investment into a good or great investment is through no shortcuts, corporate discipline. And yeah, Chris, I've been at it for a long time. This is the 13th company I played a leadership role. I've started 12 businesses in my life. Most are still around. Some of them are really well known to your listeners. And it's not that I haven't made mistakes. Jesus, there's a graveyard full of the mistakes I've made, but they've never been about dishonesty or misrepresentation or self-dealing. They've just been about, getting better and better. But I do have a lot of experience right now, I would say as much as any executive in our industry. And I've been on some real winning teams and I've been in some challenging situations, but I feel very qualified along with my co-executives to fix this company. And I think we fixed it. And not to say it's simple, but it also isn't that complicated. I'm just kind of bringing this back down to business 101. And I think that for a long time, the cannabis industry was operating like it was sort of like the laws of economics and business were not immutable for the cannabis industry. We were operating in sort of like a hysterical environment where, let's just be honest, even some of the biggest names in our industry were doing some dumbass shit. They just were. You can see it now. When you see Auroras and Canopies taking multi-billion-dollar goodwill impairments, What does that tell you? It tells you that there was a bit of hysteria and that we lost our bearings. And now we're back to what we call solid, financially literate management approaches where we need to become profitable. And I'll say, Chris, that we've seen this not only in cannabis. The world was on a sort of like venture steroids with the gig economy. We saw companies that have really uncertain paths towards profitability, like WeWork, command insane valuations, Uber, other examples. And the idea that, if you brought up profitability, people looked at you like you showed up at an orgy wearing clothes. I met the guys at Robinhood at a pitch event in 2016, obviously a pretty successful company, and someone asked them how they're going to make money, and people hissed. They actually hissed in the audience, like, what an ill-informed question. Meanwhile, it's not an ill-informed question. It's the first question an investor should ask is, how are you going to make money? If I was looking at Aurora, my question would be, how are you going to make money at this point? And the answer is, we're going to grow our revenue, grow our margin, reduce our expense, focus on our core markets, and then we're going to execute on all those things. So I feel that, I can't speak to the promises made that were not able to be kept by others and across our whole industry. I don't think it was a lack of good faith. I think they believed it. It's just that
there was some bad faith too.
Yeah, there was some bad faith too, but I'm not identifying anyone in 1933 to be part of that. Sincerely, I don't think they were. But there was worse than bad faith. There was terrible actors across our industry. We've seen it. I was on Steve D'Angelo's podcast. I always say blame it on the bankers. They were in large part responsible for some of the devastation, some of the mess at cap table. It is true, and it's unfortunate. And I've been on both sides of it. I've been sort of, I have scars on my back from what I think was some pretty slick moves by capital market people that I did not endorse, did not think was in the best interest of shareholders. So I'm a simple guy in that I'm a do no harm, do well, do good for everybody approach. And again, to the investors that are fatigued and they're tired of the next talking head is talking about, I'm telling you that there's nothing up these sleeves. I only have one outcome here. Whether I succeed or not, I do not know, but I will promise you that I cannot succeed unless you succeed as well. That's for sure.
We've got a lot of questions that are specific to individual brands and partnerships, but I think I can sort of roll them all up into one. While you're focused on, we're going to grow flower, we're going to sell flower, the many partnerships that have been done along the way, are they still a focus, or are they really secondary in importance right now as you get the nuts and bolts working?
The succinct answer, they're secondary. Of course, they're not all the same. So some of them have a higher priority, but just generally, my thesis is that unless we have surplus capacity that we cannot meet the market with our own brands, why would we ever pay someone else 10 or even 15% of the revenue when we could easily book that revenue under our own brand and capture the extra margin? So I do think that this is another thing that I think a lot of cannabis companies went hog wild on, but I'm not really sure. This house of brand strategy where you keep signing up. Now, depending on what you are, I get like a Flower One. That's an important part of their strategy. They've got a big ass facility that produces a lot of product, and they're going to need an old pal to help push that product. But I see 1933 as a different situation. I see we should be able to sell all of our flowers under our own brands. All of it, period, full stop, to the very last gram. And while I think we do have some licensing deals that still make sense for us and still are net accretive, overall, if it doesn't meet that test, either if it doesn't bring a technology that we don't have, like for example, in some of our concentrate brands, what we're really getting is a technology transfer, an input, say a cartridge, something that we think we don't have ourselves that will actually move the needle for us and more than make up on the margin difference that we can gap up when we sell it. But in the flower category, with very few exceptions. We'll keep a few because I think you should have some diversification. Largely, we're focusing on selling it under our own brand because the economics are just so much more favorable.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. In terms of California, has the presence there resulted in any significant revenue?
No.
So does that make California an X priority, or is
I think it's not something that, we're not giving up on California. Far from it. I wouldn't want anyone to take that away. I think California is an inevitable place where 1933 is going to do enterprise, meaningful enterprise. One of the reasons I love the Las Vegas market is you get a constant recycling of people from California, typically when tourism is going at full throttle. So your brand equity can translate very well from Nevada to California. It may not go across, maybe people won't know these brands on the other side of the country, but they'll certainly know them in California. But again, going back to this and this goes to your question about investors that have heard this all before, as long as the short-term economics of California are resulting in more money going out than is coming in, it becomes a lower priority for the company. And that's true of all jurisdictions not named Nevada.
So no necessarily plans to reach out into other states going forward in the short term?
I do. I absolutely have serious plans, but I think that right now that's something that will be available to us on positive terms if we take care of our house first. So step one is to take care of the house. That's a good house. It can provide for many people in that house. And when we feel that that is mission accomplished, and I'm confident that we'll be in a much stronger position than the market may see us at today, then it would make sense for us to begin to export some of our brands or even our operational acumen to other states. But to do it right now when we're still focusing on the core mission, in my opinion, would be nothing short of irresponsible.
I think most people would agree with that. On the M&A front, are there, as the bodies float by, are there any potentially that you're looking to, maybe being a man of deals, to pick up on the cheap that could, get you closer to where you need to be?
Yeah, that's a great turn of phrase, by the way. Very, very visual. I was on a call with another group in Nevada today with sketching out in a very nascent, preliminary, may never happen, might not even get past this call. But yes, the short answer is I think that as much as we're head down, this is me looking down, we're also looking up a little bit, because I do think that there's going to be some opportunities that are compelling. So the answer is, without distracting ourselves from the mission at hand, without feeling that we need to do a deal because that's our salvation. One area that 1933 definitely is interested in expanding into is to get more vertically integrated. I think that's a fair comment. I believe it is the unbridled attention of management to attempt to try to acquire or apply for prima facie or vend into a dispensary or two or three, because the macroeconomics are really favorable if you can get that degree of vertical integration. I think anyone that sees Planet 13 sees that that's what they've just recently done. I was reading their sort of pre-earnings and guidance this morning, and I think there's a lot of merit. We see that there are dispensaries that don't own cultivation that are really struggling right now, even though their top line's okay, they just can't make that much money. And then we see when you're able to essentially make a lot of your products, control your means of production, being able to vertically integrate into your dispensary can be a margin pickup and a revenue pickup. So definitely these are areas of potential growth through M&A that we're looking at. But again, probably nothing imminent, to be quite frank.
Okay, so if MedMen starts filling the room with offers to take over their dispensaries, there's no rush. There's plenty of land to grab as it's the right time to do it.
Yeah, I think that we would have to be like a perfect constellation, because what I'm trying to do right now is de-risk this company and not re-risk it. And right. I think that once we're more de-risked, then I can say, okay, we're going to go from a little risk off to a risk on. Risk off means just kind of what I've described, which is getting cash flow positive, so we can know that no matter what happens, whatever the temperature is in the capital markets around cannabis, we're here for the long haul. As long as we're here for the long haul, we're going to be in great great shape. So it doesn't mean, I mean, it could be that a deal gets done more quickly, but right now, again, step one, de-risk by improving the financial performance of the company. And then when we feel that that's done, it'll probably increase our appetite for a little bit more venture exploration to either expand into other asset classes or into other jurisdictions.
At the current market cap, how do you defend against the M&A activity on the other side of people coming along and saying, that's a nice
Quote Nancy Reagan, just say no. No, I mean, literally, I've been approached. I guess people thought, I'm some sort of like gunslinging, deal-making CEO. So when I first got announced, I had, I wouldn't call it a tsunami of interest, but quite a few groups called me. And I just said, well, simmer down. This company does not have a for sale sign. I'm not here to clean it. I'm not here to sell it. I want to be very clear here. And my view is it's very difficult. I mean, there's, right now our shares are widely held, so no one's got a position where they can start to agitate for sort of like activism, shareholder moves to do a deal. I think right now we're not interested because I just feel that, let's just say hypothetically a big MSO, whoever, just plug in your big name, any of the high flyers or medium, mid-range. My view is that if we do what I think we're going to do, our stock is going to respond very favorably. I won't tell you where it's going to go because no one can say that, but the fact that it could 2, 3, or 4, or 5x from where we are would not be shocking to me. It still would put us in a reasonably defendable market cap. We do a deal with a much larger entity and we're taking back their stock, then we have to ask ourselves, is that stock going to 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 times? And the answer may be yes, but more likely the answer may be no. So I feel we're more likely to see an improvement for our shareholders by running this company ourselves and not becoming a spoke in a much bigger wheel.
If you kind of bring me to something that I think applies to a lot of good little companies in the cannabis space right now, in that a lot of people keep putting their money into ACB and Canopy and the big players. As the big players keep tumbling down, thinking that's value. You guys, to double someone's money, you've only got to get from 8 cents to 16 cents. That's a couple of weeks of good news or of increased interest compared to needing to add another $800 million in market cap to get the same return on a True Leaf.
I so agree with that. I think that just looking at Canada, the country that I came of age in the cannabis industry, there's still great stories out there, but I think that the US is the really interesting market right now. And I anticipate that there's going to be some form of harmonization between federal and state laws in our lifetime, ideally in the next couple of years. I actually think it's sooner rather than later. And I think that that's going to create a surge in interest in U.S. operators. And I think Canada, they've had their sort of come to God moment already. We've had it. I would love to be wrong, but I don't ever see Aurora going back to where it once was, stock price wise. I'd love to be wrong. I'd love to see Canopy get back to over $70. I'm not holding my breath if that's going to happen. Kronos, a company that I have a long association with, to put it mildly, I'd love to see it get back to $34. Maybe it will, but it's not. It's a long way to go from where they are to where. But
to get there, they'd need to show some serious profitability over a long period. I think, like, no one's really going into the cannabis is just going to blow up just cause hype anymore.
Yeah, that's what I think, is that we had misled. Maybe misled's the wrong word, but we had taught investors to use the wrong valuation metrics for these companies, and we turned it into a land race. Who has the most land? Who has the most who's in the most countries? And what we should have said is, who can actually run a profitable business? And there was some smaller businesses that I prefer to the big caps because they're profitable. They may not be putting up numbers that are shock and awe. Maybe they're not going to do $90 million quarters, but they're profitable, and that's of interest to me. So that's exactly my analysis, as well as, yes, 1933 is trading right now more or less in that dreaded penny stock territory. But if you're an investor, you should be measuring ROI. It doesn't make a difference what is the price. The question is, what is the company going to do? And if a company can go from 6 cents to 18 cents, that's as good as a company. That's as good as Tesla going from 400 to 1200. And so I think that I'm not poo-pooing anyone's investment decisions, but I largely agree that there's some sort of like emotional comfort around these big names, and the thought is, Aurora's being beaten up. And I'm not advocating it's Aurora, But there's a mentality amongst investors, which is it can't go down any further. Oh, yes, it most certainly.
That mentality's been there for the last 600% down. It's been crazy.
Well, people keep buying thinking, they've hit the bottom, and then it's like catching falling knives. So it's a tricky industry. I've seen, like as you have, Chris, we've been at this, both of us now, for a long time. I think you've been in this space since like 2011, more or less, 2012.
I think neither of us had gray hair when we started out.
More of it. But my passion for this industry is without any limitation. I'm so enthusiastic about the overall growth of the global cannabis industry. And I haven't lost sort of that like wide-eyed sense of wonder about what we're doing here. But I really do think at this point, it's real simple. You got to run these things like businesses. And you got to assume a good MO, I would say to any cannabis company, is assume you're never going to raise another dollar, and now show me how you're going to survive. And if your survival depends upon continuing to tap the capital markets, I'm not saying that we won't have to do that someday. I'm positioning us so that we will not be able, but that's what I would say to any executive is in this industry right now is show me a path towards cash flow positivity if you never raise another dollar. And if they can't do it, then I have a legitimate concern about the long-term sustainability of that business.
Just lastly, tell me your psychedelics plan. Because everyone else has one.
Take as much as I can on weekends. I'm fascinated by the space. I really explored psychedelics a lot when I was younger. It wasn't a microdosing. I was totally in
macrodosing.
All the Castaneda books and all the Aldous Huxley books, and I had some experiences that are to this day I would call life-changing. So I have some participation. I was a shareholder in Salvation Botanicals, which got taken over by Numinous. So I'm a happy shareholder in that company. Red Holland, I'm a shareholder. Global Go, the company that I chair in LA, did a webinar. I think I'm trying to, like everyone else, get a handle. Partly, I'm also watching how the capital market participants are trying to turn this into the next cannabis. I think it's quite different, in my opinion. I'm not saying we won't have recreational mushroom coffee shops. We very well might more quickly than I had thought, but largely I see these as therapeutic remedies that are going to go through expensive long-term drug development, which is what largely these companies are right now. And I think it's great. I think it's great for the world that we are revisiting these incredible therapies. For me, I'm actually just happy to watch the industry develop, and I'm happy to say, maybe I will find a path in, but not everything for me has to be like, how am I going to make money on it? Like I really feel that's sort of like a sickness in our culture, and I'm just going to enjoy it as a interested person. I've always been spiritually ambitious and intellectually. I find the whole psychoactive psychedelic journey to be incredible. It makes you, I think, in a better human being. I'm like a meditator and a periodic faster and into yogi, so I'm into a lot of the stuff with breath work, and it all fits in. It's a modality that all fits in nicely. Now, that's not to say that I haven't brainstormed on things that I think are relevant, but I'm frankly interested more in community engagement. I'm definitely not going to start a company aimed to get FDA approval on a novel therapy. There's enough people doing it right now. So I'm fascinated, but right now, unless I can find a way to do it in 1933, I'm likely not to do it.
Does it strike you a little bit as, and I realize we're getting a bit off topic on cannabis here, but does it strike you as a little bit like 2013 in cannabis, where everyone was like going to start a cannabis company and figure out later exactly how?
I think it's exactly like that, brought to you by the same investment bankers.
And the same CEOs in some cases.
Like I feel like it's deja vu all over again. Yeah. Only, we know a lot more now than we did then. And so you'd think that there would be a little bit more sort of analysis about where these companies can go right, where they can go wrong. But there's this rush, this sort of like gold rush mentality that is exactly like it was in 2012, 2013. And I remember just the velocity when I was running PharmaCann, now Kronos. It was just like month after month, the amount of people that were knocking on our door looking for capital, pitching business plans. And everyone kind of lost their head a little bit for a while. And people put cannabis on their deck. They were worth $40 million without any assets underfoot. So I would just say to investors, learn from what went right and learn from what went wrong in cannabis. And yeah, might there be a little bit of a bubble here where you might trade in and trade out? I'm not a trader, so good for you on that. But if you're looking at the space and trying to figure out where to put your capital in, look very carefully at these companies and remember what you thought about some of these great cannabis companies 2 years ago and how you feel about them today. Right. And bring I wouldn't say bring a skeptical approach, but just peel away the hype from the reality is what I would encourage anyone to do. There is a huge market here for these products, but largely I think they're going to be going the route of, pharmaceutical verification prescribed by licensed psychiatrists and psychologists.
Indeed. Look, I've taken a good hour of your time, and we put all the hard questions to you. You've answered them really well. I will say, I appreciate a guy who, by all accounts, could probably go retire in the Bahamas quite happily, who rolls his sleeves up, takes over a company that needs high-level help, and buys in on that company to make sure that he's in the same boat as all the investors. Respect to you for taking that path. And, I got to think that your next financials will be decent, and the ones after that will really reflect the intensity that you put to this job.
That's very kind of you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I love working. What am I going to do? I would go crazy. I'd drive my family nuts. I'm a creative entrepreneur. This is my passion. I love working in team environments. I love our industry. And, whether I could retire or not is a moot point. I have no interest in retiring. Although the Bahamas does sound nice, I have to say.
It does sound nice, doesn't it? I will say you've got some good people working with you. We've on and off been partners with 1933 over the last few years several times, and the experience has always been high quality. They're a good crew.
I agree completely. Thank you for sharing that. I'll make sure they know that as well.
Have a great day, man.
Thank you so much, Chris. Pleasure. Thanks, everybody.